Hi, this is Amy Lewis, Marketing Manager at Cisco, and we're here with Jeremiah and Jeff. And on Engineers Unplugged today, we're going to be talking about converged management and hashtag simplicity. It's going to be a wild ride, so I know you're not ready. I'm just going to pass it to Jeremiah and we'll roll.
Thanks, Amy. So what Jeff and I wanted to talk about today was how, as we look at customers in the enterprise, how they're buying hardware changes, and the buying patterns around the hardware are also changing the tool sets that they use and what they need and what they're looking for out of a systems management standpoint. So I'm going to give the microphone to Jeff, and I'm going to draw through a couple different scenarios that we see enterprise customers using to relate intelligence and workloads to the hardware that they're looking at, and we're going to kind of look at how that's evolved here over the last 2 years or so. Jeff is one of the analysts over at Gartner, and so I think it's going to be an interesting perspective from his side to look and see kind of where that's going and what he sees from his side of the fence. So this is for you, and I'll get started.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
All right, so bring that over here. So what we're going to start with is the thing that matters, right? So the workloads and the IT staff who are in charge of making sure that those workloads do what they're supposed to. So we'll put...
I thought money is what matters.
Workloads matter too, Jeff. I promise you. All the analysts tell me that.
Not for my people.
So down here at the bottom, we have the traditional infrastructure, right? So we've got storage, we've got the network, and then we've got the compute side. And today, what most of the enterprises have done in kind of a legacy environment is that they create a relationship between the IT teams and each of these components separately, right? So any context between the components, anything where the workload is consuming resources across the components, the intelligence there is all built in by the IT teams.
So it seems extra complex because you've got one guy with this girth of hardware that he's got to bring together, and it's a lot of individual components that he's trying to manage.
It is, and every time one of those components changes or he picks a new vendor or the vendor does an upgrade, his ability to manage that can change, and so there becomes this complex relationship between IT and all the individual components that are used.
What about buying the hardware from the same vendor? I mean, the vendors always promise that if you buy everything from me, it automatically goes together seamlessly, and I'm sure that must be the case.
Sure. Well, what the vendors do is they introduce software. Right? So instead of talking to each of the components individually, this guy up here, he's going to have an orchestration stack, and he's going to have a monitoring tool, and he's going to have a provisioning tool. And these provisioning tools, again, are still talking directly to the individual pieces, right? I mean, there's still no context. And any context that gets introduced here, I'll use the green marker for this one, is going to cost a significant amount of money.
Because money is what matters.
This is where the consultants come in. This is where they're going to build that context and build that awareness of the workloads into what is essentially a generic hardware stack and a generic software stack.
But it seems to me if you take this model, now I not only have to get the hardware to talk to each other, I also have to get the software to talk to each other and talk to the hardware, and it looks like you've created some sort of mesh network of information. Pain. It's not, it's not hashtag simplicity.
No. And importantly, every one of these connectors is independent. So if I upgrade my storage software or my storage firmware, if I upgrade my network firmware, I am most likely going to break something upstream. And now it's this guy up here's job to either pay more money to have that fixed or to stay on top of that so that he can continue to use the tools.
Yeah, so this seems that from a CMDB or configuration management perspective, it seems to be a little bit of a nightmare.
It is. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at two ways in which hardware convergence is trying to help this. And one is going to be in the kind of the hyper-converged space, right? So these 2U appliances, the SimpliVities and Nutanixes of the world, where they are creating the hardware as an object and then completely abstracting that object out, right? So I still have storage and compute, right? The network is typically left upstream, but I'm going to put an abstraction layer on top of that. That means that those individual pieces don't exist as discrete objects anymore, right? We're going to virtualize them into pools. We're going to do something with them so that these customer tools, and they may still exist, but these customer tools are going to talk directly to that abstraction. And this makes it more simple, but what you've done is you've taken the ability for an enterprise, looking at a tier 1 application, you've taken the ability away for them to tune the individual components specific to, say, an SAP workload or a large Exchange workload, right? I mean, we've abstracted it to the point where nothing matters below the line, which for single application instances and for SMB environments may be an excellent choice.
You know, I love analogies and I love stories, and I'm thinking about this. And is it unlike hiring a party planner? I mean, I've got my people coming to the party. I've got the providers that I'm trying to work with, and I've got this party planner in the middle that's trying to make my life #simplicity, and bring it all together and just make sure that for me, I only have to pay one place and I get everything I need out of it.
Right. The difference is picking a party planner who says you get no input into the party, I will take care of that for you and you will take care of me, or a party planner who sits down and says, what do you want, and then goes in and builds that. I still need the components because I may want to have a party that has more cake, or I may want to have a party that has, a better magician. I don't want to just get rid of the whole thing and say I want a party. Especially from an analogy standpoint, especially in the enterprise, I need to have I/O intensive applications. I need to have compute intensive applications.
Well, really, I want a party with more liquor.
Or that.
And
we are in Vegas.
If you've met my wife as you have, you know that she doesn't want the input, she just wants it done for her.
That's what you're here for. So the third model, kind of the model that we see emerging, is this idea, whether it's a convergent infrastructure or a reference architecture, of putting the components together in a way that you understand the context. You as the purchaser of the infrastructure understand the context. So I still have my tools, right? And so I still have my components that I can tweak and that I can specify how I want to relate to the workload. What we're starting to see is that this is still, it's closer to simplicity, but it's still a one-to-one relationship. What we're seeing is the emergence of an intelligence layer that sits kind of as a bubble around the infrastructure. And this intelligence layer has the ability to provide an abstraction without removing the customer's ability to talk to the individual components. So instead of having each of these tools talking everywhere, we can go back to the simplicity of that hyper-converged model and have one connector. Maybe have that be an API-driven connector, maybe have that be a programmatic connector, but what we still get is the ability for the customer to do what they need to with the components.
And what's a CNS?
That would be compute, network, and storage.
See, I thought you were going to tell me that was central nervous system and give me some sort of great analogy about how it brings it all together.
No, I leave the analogies to you, Jeff.
Well, you know who's better.
I do.
And what's with the unicorn and the rainbow?
So the unicorn, we made him a relatively angry unicorn, but the unicorn would be Amy's request that we put something together here and kind of wrap that up for her.
So that's right. It's always unicorn time here on Engineers Unplugged. And I wanted to thank Jeremiah and Jeff. And as you can see, we pre-unicorn today. That's #simplicity. If you know a unicorn is coming, go ahead and draw it. Yeah, so what is the unicorn's name? That's today's challenge. Name that unicorn.
Oh, you, Jeff. What's the unicorn's name?
Simply.
That is simply unicorn. I think we've just developed a new line of cloud products. So thank you, everybody, for following along and watching us today on Engineers Unplugged. Great session. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.